Now they're all cut out. There's extras over there. And I've got all the whites on this, but I went ahead and I put the colors that are going to go to this block. This is that pine tree block. So if you're following along, go ahead and pull out your paper. And if you notice, the very first thing we're going to do is a flying geese. Now, if you've never, ever done a flying geese, get yourself a piece of fabric that you can make boo-boos on and everything else, because you're going to want to make one the first time around for yourself. The first couple of times I did it, I could not get my points. You're going to need a 1/4 inch here so that when we sew this together, you don't lose your tip of your goose. The directions say that we're going to be using all of these right here, CEF. They should all be the same size if you cut them out correctly. And then we're going to be using the 3.5, which is the squares. They're going to get 2 each. And that's number 1. And we're going to make every one of them. This will get 2, this will get 2, but this entire stack is going to be done. So you're going to have 6, 6, and 6. So you're going to have 18 flying geese. But like I said, if you've never ever done a flying goose, whatever, before, please make a scratch, because you don't want to be ruining this good fabric when you learn how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to do the first one. And then you're going to continue and do all of them. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to do the next, which is number 2. And it's a smaller one. And by the time you've done all of these, you're going to be an old pro at doing them. So you'll be able to do the smaller ones. And I always find that it's always easier to make something bigger than it is to make it small. This is good practice to be doing all these. But like I said, make one on your own fabric. Just grab 2 different colors. They don't need to be white and a color. They can be 2 as long as you can distinguish them. Don't use the same exact color. But just do your practice. Alrighty, so for the really new ones, if you need to mark your fabric because you are unsure of your quarter line, then this is the way that you do it. You get a friction pen, a pencil, a pen, whatever you want to use to mark, and you put your ruler off my ruler has a 1/4 inch right here, and I take the dash lines and I take it off of the fabric. Then I mark. Now this is just a sample because I'm doing it on the right side of the fabric. I don't put the dashes on because I'm going to show you why. If I put the dashes on, notice it covered up the line. Well, between the line and the outer edge is 1/4 inch. This is bigger than 1/4 inch. So your square or your rectangle or whatever you've measured for will not come out correctly. That's why I go off the edge here like this, and then I mark. Because when I sew, this is 1/4 inch right there. So that's how I mark my fabric if I need to mark it. Begin these blocks. The first thing you want to do is you want to take your 3.5 inch square that you've made, which are the wings of the bird, and we are going to draw a line. I'm using a friction pen, and you want to go with the light color. I mean, I always do. And you want to go from one end of the square all the way to the other end, and you're marking it because this is where you're sewing your line. So every one of these has to be done. Don't put it on the right side. If you're using this fabric, hold this to the light. I can see the dots, and then flip it upside down. And you can either do one at a time or all of them at the same time, and I usually sit and I just mark them all at the same time. As long as I don't put an iron to it, that line is not going anywhere. And this red one is a light one that I have. It'll look like that. And just do them all. That's what I do. I just do them all, stack them all up, and then I just grab them when I need them. Doing a lot of sewing lately, you want to change out your needle. The way that I do this is I don't just change my needle out, and I know that there are people out there that say change it for every project. Well, you know what? I'm sorry, but that to me is a waste. I use a size 12 needle. Before every project, I take my needle out and I actually feel my needle. So I am feeling it for any kind of burrs. So let's say this is your needle. I take it out, I take my hand, I go straight down it like that. As soon as you do that, when you get to the tail end of it, if it's got a little burr on that, you're going to feel it. That's when you get rid of that needle. Well, that's when I get rid of the needle. If you need to replace yours, do it now. If you need to clean it up, if you've been doing any applique that you have fusible, then what I do for applique is I take a Q-tip, I put a little alcohol on it, and I hold my needle, like let's say this is your needle, I hold it, and usually the gunk from the glue is all up in here because as it goes down it shoves it up. I put alcohol and I do this exactly on both sides and I roll my needle as I go like that and it takes all of that off. Then when I'm done I take it and just run my hand, my two fingers like this, finger and thumb, and wipe it all off and it's good to go and you can continue to use it. Now I am using in here, I have a off-white color of thread, which you can see right there, and it's actually polyester. I want it to have a little give, and polyester does have a little give. I have pinned one wing on my fabric here, and I don't start here at the corner because then right now I have my machine, the plate on my machine is made for a zigzag stitch because I am in the middle of doing some other things. If you only have a little circle down there, that's fine, but I find it difficult to start at the end unless you use a leader ender. And what is a leader ender? For all of those just now joining, this is what a leader ender is. In my case, it is 2 pieces of fabric. I put it together, right sides together. So there's 2 pieces of fabric. This is 2.5 inches. I've cut this from leftover fabric. I will do a scant 1/4 inch. I line it up. I put my length on 2.5, which is 2.5, and I sew a strip. When I get to the end of it, instead of cutting it off, I take my fabric at the corner. I would put it up underneath there because remember now, since it's attached to this, it won't jam your fabric down in there, hopefully. Let's try it out. Because what it's doing is just coming off one going onto the other and it just pulls it straight in there. If you feel like you have got to start it at the corner, that's fine. I mean, we're creatures of habit. If that is all you've ever learned, then that's the way you're going to want to do it. Or maybe you can't do it any other way. And you go right to the other edge. Let me put my lift up on that. And just, I hold on to it just to make sure it goes right to the very edge like that. Now I take it off. If you want to chain stitch them, take your very next piece, do the same thing. And you're putting your right sides together when you do this. And I am doing the right hand side. There's no order, just be consistent. Put your fabric up there and continue. And when you get done, all of these things will be connected. Now this saves you thread in the long run because you're not having to cut it off. And you can do every one of one side of your goose just like this. And after you got a big old long line of them, let me go ahead, I'm just going to cut mine off. Then you'll have a big long line like this and all you do is snip them. And then what I do is I take my little leader ender, and the reason it's called a leader ender is because it either leads when you do it, or if you need to do it at the tail end when you get off so that it doesn't jam, you can do it at the tail end. I set them all aside to do the next part of this. I don't like to waste this leftover fabric. And I know when I get up there, I'm going to iron it and I'm going to fold it over like that. Now the next step that you would normally do is you would go ahead and cut this off. But let me tell you what I do. I save these fabrics because this also is going to make a project. I take my ruler and I come on the left-hand side of my drawn line, which is my sewing line. I'm going to get you a little closer so that you can see it. See the line right there? This is a 1/4 inch on my ruler. I put it right over on the left-hand side of the line I just drew. I make another line. Now this is the part that's going to be cut off. And then I'm going to sew, and then I'm going to cut between it, and then I have this as my next half square triangle. So you see here where I have sewn it, just like that. Now I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to cut right between the two of those. I'll go over to the iron. I'm going to fold this back, and I'm going to iron it, and I'm going to take and make this go to the dark side, and I'm going to do the same thing here and open it up, and I have a half square triangle. So I always set my seam, and the rule of thumb is whatever color you want it to go towards when you're ironing, that's the one you want to put up. If I went like this and ironed, then it's going to go to the white side. If I flip it like this, it's going to go to the dark side. So just flip it a little bit. I go right in the middle. I hold up my fabric, I go in the middle, and then I go to the right and the left-hand side. This way it doesn't stretch. You want to be careful that your fabric doesn't stretch, so that if it's on the bias right here, which is where your stretch is at, then it does not stretch. Now that is one side of the goose, and we're going to turn it over, and now we're going to do the other side while this is ironed down, and then that will stay down. And then as far as my other little piece, I opened it up, I ironed it, and there's our little half square triangle. Now after you've made the big ones, go ahead and make the little ones, and then you decide whether you want to do the little corners like I did here. I did them with the little ones just like I did with the big ones. It's going to be your call whether you want to make them that small or not. I already have a whole bunch like that, so I went ahead and made some more. And now we're going to go on to step, I'm calling it step 3 because it's the third strip in this block. And as you do these all together like this, we're going to end up with all 6 blocks made. What we're going to make now is going to be the trunk of the tree. You use, of course, your whites and one of your browns. You're going to use the 3.5 by 1.5, which is your long ones here. And you're going to use these, and we're going to put this on, we're going to make a white on this side and a white on that side. And same with the little ones here. Just like that. Now let's go ahead and sew this. So I'm just sewing it here. I get another piece. And let's take a look at it. If you have to mark, by all means, mark your fabric if you feel more comfortable with it. If you don't have to, then use your 1/4 foot. You can use if you don't have a 1/4 foot, you can use washi tape. You can make a couple piles of it. You can do a post-it, or if you want, you've got a spare ruler. Take this ruler. This is the perfect size ruler. Measure 1/4 inch from your needle out to the right of your machine. Lay this down and tape this down with washi tape. And that is a perfect edge. It is high enough that your fabric's not going to go over when it goes up against it. While you're sewing it like that, there's no way that's going to go above that. And that'll give you that 1/4 inch, and you won't have to mark it if you don't want. Here's what I do. I just pin them all, and then I will sew one right after the other. And I'll go ahead and I'll chain stitch these. Now, I don't mark them. When I reach my pin, I'll take it out. I've marked the little ones as well as the big ones. And I always do a practice one ahead of time before I do it to see if there's going to be any kind of problems. I want to make sure before I start doing anything there aren't any problems. And they're going to have us, based on the directions, we're going to iron them open, and when we iron them, we're going to iron towards the brown fabric or the dark side, depending on what you're using. If you're using your own stash, you may have black or gray trunks. Or light green trunk. I mean, trunks come in all different colors. The reason for this chain stitch is that you save thread because you're not having to take your thread out. Now, my sewing machine has an automatic cutter, but a lot of them don't. I have another machine that does not have a cutter. And if your machine doesn't cut your thread, then when you pull it out to cut it, then you've got like about this much, maybe an inch or two in the way of thread. And so that does add up. As soon as we get done working on these trunks here, we're going to be putting it together. And we're going to end up with 6 blocks. Now I'm going to clip them all apart. I'm getting ready to do the other side, and what I do is I iron them open. And the reason I do that is that one time my daughter and I were doing something, I can't recall what it was, but it was similar to this, where they both had to go to the inside, and she had difficulty with it. And now she's a new sewer, she doesn't sew, she's not got it perfected or anything. I said, well, in that case, from here on out, because she was getting it skewed when she was trying to iron it. I said, well, then next time what we'll do is we'll just open it, we'll iron one to the inside, and then we'll go and we'll put the next one on, and then we'll iron it to the inside. And she said that ended up being a lot better for her. And what I do is, instead of putting it on the brown and sewing it, I go ahead and flip it over and put it on the white this time. And now I'll cut them apart and iron them all. Okay, so I have laid it out the way that it's going to get sewn together. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with the big trees. So here's the first, and you sew it to this one, then to that one, and then to this one. And then when we're done there, we're going to sew this to that, to that, to this, and then to this. Then we will combine these two, which will be rows, and then we'll put the sides on. So let's start with the big one first, and all I'm going to do is pin that one to that one, and I'll show you how I'm going to do it so I can show you how to mark the tip of it. Now, since this one goes on top, first I flip it over. Now, I can't see the tip up here, so I have to turn the whole entire thing over. What I want to do is I want to get it in the middle of this, so I take this and I fold it, and I'm trying to find the middle point. There it is right there, which is also down here. Let me redo that. Hold on one second. Okay, so there's my middle right there. And I'm going to be looking at this. So I'm going to take my mark. You can use anything you want. It'll be buried. You're not going to see it. And the point is right here where the two cross over. Let me show you here. So my seam crosses over like that. Let me get the other pin here for you, so that you don't see the same color. And then what I'm going to do, and it doesn't need to be much of a mark, it just needs to be enough to see it. On the bottom, I want to stitch on this side of that line. So I'll come right here to do it. So now what I'm going to do is, here is my middle right here. I'm going to take a pin, and I put my pin, which my little seam is right there, as you can see right here. Let me back it up a little bit so you can see it. See it right there? And then I put it at 1/4 inch right there, which will match the fabric. Let me go down a little bit more. Just a skosh bit right there. And then while I have that pin in, like that, then I'll pin over here on this side, and pin over on this side here. I'm a pinner. I do like to pin. And I'll go to the end and pin. Let's just stick it right over there. And right here. So I got lots of pins in there. I can go up a little higher here. There we go. And then as I come down here, I'm going to go right on the edge of that line. I can take this pin out now and go at an angle with it. There you go. Then when I get to right about here, I'll stop and pull my pin out. As I do this, I take my time. And keep in mind, you can always take it out if it doesn't work. That's the good thing about sewing. You can always take it out if it doesn't work. And you can also baste it if you wanted to. I just take my time. And now on the next one, I'm going to show you another little trick you can do. Now, I did not trim my blocks down, so some of them might be a little bit big, which is fine. I don't have a problem trimming it down afterwards. Let's take a look at it. The main objective here is to make sure we didn't clip the nose of that goose off. And we did not. Nose. Let me iron it. All right, there's what it looks like. See how this block looks like a little bit bigger? See? That's what I was telling you about the blocks being a little bigger, and I don't have a problem with it. And there's the nose. It's still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. Didn't get cut off or anything. Let's do the next one, and then I'm going to show you what I was talking about. Alrighty, I got it pinned, just like before. Instead of starting down here and sewing, we're going to start on the top part and go across this first. That's what we're going to do instead of starting at the end. Now my needle is on the right of the blue line. I'm not locking it into place. I'm just going to start sewing. And I'm staying on that right hand side. We can always redo it if we have to. Because you can always go over that part twice if you'd like to. Once you come off of it, break your thread. And now start back up at the top at the very beginning. Whoops, hit the wrong key there. And then just slowly come on down until you meet the part that you did already. And then when you get on it, you look at it and you slowly go over it. And I just go over it one more time. That's it. Since you've gone over it, you've locked it into place. Make sure our tip's not gone. And no, it's not. So I will go ahead and iron it. There's the tip on that one. And it's not gone either. It's down in there. And what I've done on the back side, whoops, let me flip it over here, is that I went ahead and ironed up towards the smooth side instead of coming down towards this part right here. Now, let's put our trunk on. Yes, first I pinned it in the middle, and I'm sewing from this end to the other end. So I pinned to hold this seam down so that my sewing machine needle can catch that and not flip it over because I want to keep these on the inside. I always do one in the middle and I do one at each end. So now let's go ahead and we'll sew that. And there's the trunk, and I'll iron it. And there we go. We got one strip done. So let's do one of the little ones. The process is the same way. I put the mark up there, and I pin it both directions. Now we're going to sew it. And you can do either one. You can either start above it or go to the very tip top. I'm going to go to the top. Pin's not in the way right there. Let's see here. I might just have to take that out. Nope. There we go. Now I can do it. Now, if you guys starch your fabric, you need to starch it all or it'll be different sizes on you. I have not starched any of this. Let's take a look at our tip. And there it is. All right, I'm going to put the top on this, my fabric, and I fold it in half. Put a little crease on it so that I can get it in the middle of this. Just like that. I mark the top area so I don't go over the tip. I'm going to sew this. Just take your time. And I got to be real careful with my little fold here. There we go. Take a look at the tip. Okay, it looks good. Let me get it ironed. Just like before, I folded it in the middle and put a crease on the brown trunk part of the tree and a crease on here. Matched them up. And now I'm going to sew them. There we go. I put the trunk to the tree. I'm going to do the same thing. I've got a fold right here. I'm going to put a fold there in the halfway mark. I want to say there couldn't be anything that goes wrong with this. This is just straight stitching. There's nothing we got to be worried about. We don't have any noses to worry about, or just straight old seam there. Let me get my pin out. There we go. That's that strip. Now go ahead and sew all the strips together. And then we'll have 6 of each before we put them together. It's time to put them together. And if you look at it here, none of the seams are matching with each other. So it's going to be pretty easy, but you want to make sure that you do put the pin on the seam. So what I do is I go to the top and I'll pin the left side first. I'll go all the way back down here to the bottom. If for some reason your length is off, and when I say off, I mean 1/8 of an inch. Okay. If you don't want to go, first I'd look to see if one of my seams was off. That's the first thing I would do. I'd say, is one of my seams off? Am I off a little bit? If it's not the seam, then it means it's the measurements, which is fine. What you're going to want to do is you're going to put whichever piece has the larger amount, so it has the 1/8 longer, you're going to put it on the bottom so that your feed dogs will run it through for you. You're going to go ahead and pin it just like I'm doing. The only difference is, wherever it's at, if you're going to pin it loosely, it'll have a little bit of wave in it because the bottom will be a little bit bigger than the top. And as you put it on your sewing machine and you sew from the top down, then the wavy part will be incorporated into your block. Because the bottom, as it feeds, it'll slowly feed it in there and make it correct for you. But I wouldn't do it if it was bigger than 1/8 of an inch. I'd be going, and if I had more than 1/8 of an inch, I'd be making a block a little bit smaller, or hug your tips a little bit. Or you could even take a little bit off the bottom here, or a little bit off the top of this block. If it's too much, like 1/4 of an inch, then take that top off that block. Now I'm just going to take it over here and sew it, and then we'll take a look at it. Sew it so that you can see all your seams. My seams right now are going up, but everywhere that I've pinned it, I've made sure that it's held onto the seam so that it won't flip on me. As long as I don't tap my needle, I'm fine. And if you feel like you have a hard time, then just go ahead and baste it and then sew over it. You can always baste it with your largest stitch length on your machine before you actually go over it and do the finished sewing. And if you've got some of that invisible thread like I have, you could baste it with it, and it's going to go away once it gets washed anyway. There we go. Let's go ahead and pin our side little strips on here, and then we'll sew them. Now I'm going to do it on this side. Okay, there's our block, 12.5 by 12.5. And I'm going to get the rest of them finished and put them up on the design board. And I have my 12.5 inch ruler underneath it. That's how I figured out the size. So it is correct. Alright, I said I was going to show you how to correctly mark. And this is how you do it. You take your ruler and you put it from corner to corner, and then you draw your line. And that's going to be the line that you're going to sew on your goose, the flying geese, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. Then I go over 1/4 inch and I put a dash line, which is what you see right here, dashes. Then I go over 1/4 inch from the dash line and I draw a line. So here's my flying geese. I'm going to go ahead and create it and make it. Okay, so there it is. And now you cut between the dotted line. And then this is your half square triangle, and it gives you 1/4 inch, and this gives you 1/4 inch. The way that I showed you was actually only giving you 1/8 of an inch, which I don't recommend for beginners to even do that. So let me go ahead and iron this and open it up. So if you do decide to go ahead and do like I did with this, do it with 1/4 inch, so that you have 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here. And then you'll have 2 half square triangles and a flying geese. And that's what I wanted to show you. All 6 blocks done of the pine tree. It looks like a little bit of a forest, doesn't it? I really like the way they came out. I hope you all enjoyed this video and followed along. If not, and you're still getting your fabric, that's fine. You're never going to be behind, because even if we're finished, the videos are up and you can just go ahead and click on them and watch them. Okay, so we're going to come back for the second set of blocks next Monday, November 11th. I'll see y'all then. Bye-bye.